Welcome to the All That Jazz podcast. I'm your host, Matyash, and I have with me a very exciting guest today, Gary Ramsey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Matyash. So
So,
great.
sorry, cut
So
you off.
great to be here.
Yes, we actually just talked 10 minutes ago, but we're pretending we're talking for the first time. Okay, a friend wanted me to ask you this. Have you seen the video, The Truth About Cancer, and what did you think of it?
Yeah, I have seen it. I'm familiar with. I think his name is Ty Bollinger and his wife, and they put out a lot of great information. They have a lot of great, things that they find and research and bring together and make people aware of in the public that people are unaware of in terms of medicine treatments.
What do you think? So you basically had cancer and you had very little to live. According to the doctors, they were like, you
That's
only
correct.
have 3 days to live.
So
What a news.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
what a news. I had renal cell cancer. It turned out they didn't know that at the time, but the problem was I had a deadly tumor that they were actually, in a sense, told me I would die at any minute. They said it was a very, very dangerous tumor that was growing from my kidney through my renal vein, up my renal vein, and up towards my heart. They said it was highly unusual, and they said usually people like you are dead. And so basically at the diagnosis, he said you could die at any minute. And I was like, what? And he was like, you could die at any minute. And again, I had never heard of such a thing. I was like, how can you even say that to me? And then he explained it all. And then he went through the whole thing and showed me on these charts and showed me on my tests. And then I said, well, what can we do about it? And he said, well, that's the bad news. And I was like, oh, no, everything else was the good news. And now you're giving me the bad news. And the bad news was, he said, I think the minute they do anything to you to try to remove the tumor, he said it's going to fracture and it's going to stop your heart. And then he told me, he said, frankly, I'm surprised you're still alive.
Yeah, most people that would die quicker, huh?
Yeah, usually people like that die of some kind of embolism or an aneurysm. The heart just stops. And he told me that's how it'll happen. He said, you'll feel a feeling of breathlessness. He gave me the whole down thing.
Oh my God.
You'll have a little breathlessness. He said, it won't be hard. You'll have to sit down. He said, and within a few minutes, you'll be gone. That'll be it.
And then how did you take that news?
Well, I was shocked, because I knew something was wrong when I went there, but I didn't think it was that wrong. I mean, I didn't think it was like deadly. So I kind of went into, and I often tell people, and even in my book, I say it was like a surreal. Everything was surreal. I felt like I was on the Twilight Zone or something like that. I felt like I was moving through it, and I was staying relatively calm. And in it, I mentioned to you that I asked for my medical tests. I asked for all the reports. And he was kind of shocked. He was like, well, sure, but I don't know what you're really going to do with these. I said, I don't know either. I'd just like to have them. And because he said, even if you go to a hospital now, they can't do anything for you. He said, I wouldn't waste the time. I would get your affairs in order as quickly as you possibly can. You're going to make better time outside of the hospital than you will inside a hospital. So that's what I did. I got the reports, and I finally walked out of that office, and I was so relieved to be out of there. It was like, oh, and it was a beautiful day at the end of August. And I walked to this park, in this little beautiful park with, parents and children playing and kids on bikes and all kinds of stuff. And I saw everybody, and all of a sudden it just hit me that anyone at any moment could die at any minute. And the only reason between me and them is I know it and they don't.
Yeah,
and
you have proof.
Yep.
You have something, have a doctor telling you.
Yep. And I thought, oh my God, how often? And then I even was like, I could have died at any minute for weeks now. For weeks. This tumor didn't just develop in a day. So I thought, but I'm still alive and they're still alive. And then as I mentioned, I just went in this state of bliss. I just got so calm and so serene. And I just felt like everything was fine. And I just sat down in that park and I just was silent for I don't know how long until I thought of the name Anita Moorjani, which for those of you that I know you are familiar, but for those of you that are not, Anita was a woman on her deathbed in a Hong Kong cancer hospital because it was a specialized hospital because her cancer was very advanced, stage 4B lymphoma. And she had been in a coma for 30 hours. She had something like 45 minutes left to live. And she came out of the coma and told them to remove everything and said that she would be fine. And then she was, which was one of the most unbelievable stories I had ever read. She was discovered by Dr. Wayne Dyer, who we spoke about. When he found her story, he demanded that she write a book for Hay House. He did the foreword to the book. And Anita had a near-death experience. And in that near-death experience, she realized she could heal her cancer. And she came back, and that's exactly what she did. Her cancer started to disappear in that hospital almost immediately. And within 8 days, they could not find any signs of her deadly cancer.
That's amazing. I mean, the potential of the human body to heal if you have, but maybe it's a precondition is maybe the spiritual experience. So if you have a certain kind of knowingness or something, then you can heal it. It doesn't seem like the mind you can't just be like, oh, I believe, or maybe you can in some way. Like
Well,
believe.
maybe so. I mean, there are certain cases where people have done that.
Hmm.
So I'm very open about it. Mine, unfortunately, didn't go that way. I had to go through procedures. But Anita, she just kept getting better and better, and they finally had to release her out of the hospital. Her only problem was she was emaciated, but that was really, the only thing. They got her strength back, and then she was out of the hospital, and she is still alive today, and that happened in 2007. That was 13 years ago.
So when was your cancer?
2015.
2015, and
I was in 2015.
and you had read Anita's book before, right?
Correct. In 2012, I had known about Anita for about 3 years,
Okay.
and so I was it just came to me then after I got out of my little state of bliss. I thought, oh my God, she was dying and in a coma. I'm not in a coma. As a matter of fact, I felt pretty good. Everything was really great. And I thought, well, maybe something will happen for me. And maybe, who knows?
But wait,
And,
so in your state of bliss, you were like totally surrendered to the possibility of dying. You were like,
yep.
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Everything was fine.
Hmm.
Everything. My cancer was fine. I was fine. Death was fine. If I had been struck by a meteor in that moment, it would have been fine. I felt like nothing could go wrong. I don't know though why I was blessed in that way. I have a feeling it was the diagnosis that kind of put me there, but I can't really explain it even to this day.
It was like a surrendered state. Maybe
It
you
was a
went into
surrendered state.
total acceptance of the moment, and
Yes.
it was like a
And
spiritual experience. Basically, it's a spiritual
absolutely.
experience.
Absolutely.
But
And,
it sounds like to me, it sounds like your background was you were already in some spiritual stuff, being involved in or interested in Wayne Dyer's work. So maybe
mhm.
that kind of helped you with this diagnosis, because all that stuff just the theory that you read, all that, or maybe the spiritual work that you've done, all of that, just in that moment, just became activated, perhaps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also am a teacher, and I teach the Alexander technique, which is a mind-body technique. So my life had been always kind of geared in that way. And I think you're right. I think it was kind of like, a perfect storm. Everything just came together. And all of a sudden, I just felt like I was fine, even though I was dying of this deadly tumor.
It seems like a lot of times in us as humans, there has to be something radical that happens that we are ready to surrender. Like in 12-step groups, they talk about hitting bottom, and then they're like,
Yeah.
well, I can't do it by myself. I need the divine, I need God's help. I can't overcome it by myself. And
You,
this sounds like
yeah.
maybe this is an example of that as well, where you're like such a drastic moment, like, and then you come out of it joyful, basically. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I was a little too happy.
I can see
I
that.
was just a little too happy. It was a little disconcerting. and it was such a great feeling of buoyancy, and it was so freeing. It was so freeing. And even the idea that if I did die, it was just freeing. There was nothing that could stick to me, couldn't stick. I felt like Teflon. Everything was not affecting me in the same way. And I didn't feel like I was in shock. I felt very alive, more alive than usual. It was more of a heightened state, which is really
Right.
the best way I can explain it.
You were like in joy, basically. You were
Yeah.
did you ever do drugs before? I don't know.
And no, I'm not a drug person, because drugs really have a really bad effect on me. Even pot, I did it once, and everybody was there said, don't ever do that again.
It was
Because
not for you.
it was not for me. It had the opposite effect. I became almost manic, and I couldn't stop talking, and I couldn't stop running around. Uh, and I became very funny, but it was drugs. I never did well, even like NyQuil, even over-the-counter stuff. I never did very well with drugs. So I always kind of stayed away from them unless I absolutely had to take them.
Right.
Absolutely.
I think you're the second person I've heard. I don't have experience with weed myself, but you're the second person I've heard that they have had a very adverse reaction to weed.
Reaction. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So what did you do then after so you were there, you were blissed out, and then did you tell somebody about your cancer?
Oh yeah, because it occurred to me, like I came out of this, and after thinking about Anita, and I felt so great. I was like, well, what should a person who's dying do? And then I remembered the doctor said, you've got to get your affairs in order. You've got to tell someone. He said, right now, only you, me, and the people that did these tests know that you are a walking time bomb. We're the only ones. So I thought, oh my God, I got to call my sister. And, my sister knew I was going to the doctor. So as I was dialing the phone, I was thinking, oh my God, she's going to think the worst. It's been hours since. And then I thought, this is the worst. And I started laughing a little too hard. And then, of course, she got on the phone and she thought everything was great. And I was like, no, it's actually not. She goes, well, I mean, you must have had good news because you're laughing. I was like, yeah, well, there's a lot happening right now.
Yeah.
I've got a lot going on. And unfortunately, it wasn't very good news. And that's, when I finally told her, and when it sunk in, it was hard, because I realized I really had set that call up badly. But, I mean, I was new at telling people that I was going to die. So I wasn't practiced at it. And I treated things very differently later on. But I have to say, it was hard because I didn't feel bad. I didn't feel like anything was actually wrong. I felt buoyant. I felt cheerful. I felt happy, excited, filled with energy, almost
Mm.
like I was on a drug. I mean,
Wow.
really, almost like I was drugged. And I
That's
wasn't.
that's definitely not a normal reaction to getting that news that you have cancer. That's
No. And as I always say to everybody, it was a blessing. And I think because of the way that he told me, I just surrendered to it. He was so definitive about my death. He truly made me realize there was no way out of this. And I think the surrender is what helped me. I think
was
that's what actually helped me.
was his tone like very somber? Was he like sad, or was?
He was shocked. He was
Mm.
actually shocked. He was a specialist. And he had seen these things before, but I think he was shocked that because I was in pretty good shape, I think he was shocked that I was doing so well and something so horrible was going on. I remember he ran out of the office once when he saw the test results, and he didn't even look at me. He just ran out. And I didn't know what he did, but I think he cleared the rest of his patients because he knew this was going to take some time.
Mm.
And then he came back in, he looked again, and that's when he told me. And you could tell he was very kind, and he felt very bad, but he wanted me to know this is great. You are dying. This is it.
Mm.
And unlike most cancers, there's the long drawn out process. He said, not yours. He said, you might not even have cancer. He said, the tumor will kill you. Doesn't matter
Right.
if you have cancer. He said, you probably do, but it doesn't matter if you do or don't.
Is that so you don't even know if it was malignant or not, or if it was
It was. It actually was in the end, but we didn't know that at the time because we didn't do a biopsy. He said, even a biopsy, he said they would kill you doing a biopsy. He said that anything we do to you, he said it's like deadly.
so you had no medical options on the table at all.
According to him, no. And he did later on talk to somebody else who was a specialist. And he agreed that this was not a good situation at all.
Too grave, too dark.
Grave. Too grave to be good.
But now you have the knowledge of you read the Anita's book, and so what do you do then when you get home?
So oddly enough, this is where my buoyancy, things started falling to me. And that's the only way I can describe it. When everything's going great and it just falls in your lap.
Yeah, like you're in flow or something. But
Yep, I'm in a
the world
flow.
is in flow with you.
And I finally, I had made other calls. I get to my apartment. I put the key in the door, the front door, and I think of Farrah Fawcett. And you'd say, well, why do you think of Farrah Fawcett? Well, because when Farrah had died of her cancer, they flew her just before to Germany. And at the time, I had asked a friend, why did they do that? Because she was really sick. I thought, why did they fly somebody so sick to Germany? And my friend said, oh, Germany has some of the top cancer treatments in the world. So I thought, oh my God, Germany. So I flew up the stairs and I thought, I'm going to Google Germany and I'm going to see what they've got in Germany. So I get on the computer and I'm going into Germany and I'm going into Germany cancer clinics. I'm researching and going on. And all of a sudden, on the right side of the screen, you get those pop-ups while you're looking on the whatchamacallit. And this thing pops up with this beautiful palace-like place. It was all white on the side. And it said, Son of Eve. And I went, oh my God, that's gorgeous. I said, that would be such a great place to die.
Literally to die.
If you're going to die, that's the place.
Die in style.
And then I'm thinking, what is that thing? Is it what is it? It looked like a hotel, really. It looked like a palace. It looked like a palace that was for like a hotel. purposes. And lo and behold, they were a
my grandmother in the background.
wonderful.
Yes. Okay.
They were a cancer clinic. They did many things. They were a spa, they were a clinic, they were a hospital,
Mm-hmm.
and they treated cancers. And I was like, oh my God. So I'm researching, and then all of a sudden they start talking about specialties in certain cancer treatments. And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking, whoa, let me just call this. I was getting too excited. It was like, oh my God, because I felt a vibe about this piece, and I'm really good with my intuition.
Right.
So they had a number you call in the States, and I called. There's this woman, her name was Micah. She answers the phone, and we're talking, and I said, I have this very severe problem. She said, really? And I explained it to her, and I told her it was a deadly tumor and what was going on. And she said, oh yes, we're very aware of those kinds of tumors. And I said, you are? And I'm like, but they're telling me these are rare. And she said, yes, they are rare. And I said, well, then why are you familiar with these rare tumors? She said, oh, because a lot of people come here for treatment.
Mm.
And I said, well, why? And she said, well, we do treatments to prepare the tumor for the surgery.
Right.
So that it does not fracture. So that before they even touch you in surgery, we have put you through an extensive treatment. I said, you're kidding me. She said, no. She said, we have a higher success rate than the States. She said, it's still very deadly and dangerous. She said, they told you exactly correct, but we do see it from a different perspective. And I was like, boom.
What this
Different
happens on the phone, or are you already there?
On the phone.
Wow.
On the phone.
So you're ready. So you're like, this is the right place. I gotta fly there.
I couldn't even believe it. It was like a different perspective.
Yes.
And she said, now we can't guarantee it will be successful. She said, but I will tell you, we have a far better percentage on these tumors, getting these tumors out safely than the United States does. Mm-hmm. So I said, oh my God, I want to do this. And so there was a process. I had to go and, send, and that was the beautiful part. That was it. She goes, because they have to look at your case and they have to decide if they can really help you. So that's the first thing. She said, because if they don't feel they can help you, they won't accept you. She said, because there's no point. Why should we spend all your time and money? And I said, okay, great. I said, so what do we do? And she said, well, it would go a lot faster if you had your medical records. Do you happen to have them? And I was like, yes!
You have them, of course, because you took them.
I took them. And, much as I didn't even know why I took those records in the doctor's office. But for some reason, I just wanted them. Mm-hmm. And here I was, not 2.5 hours later, on the phone with someone who's asking me if I have my medical records. And she said, oh my God, she said, that is so great. She said, how did you have the foresight to take your records after hearing news like that? And I said, I don't know. It just came to me. And she said, by the way, when was your diagnosis? And I said, like 2.5 hours ago. And she's like, oh my God. She said, you're in such a great space with this. I said, yeah, I really am. And she said, well, wow. I mean, having your records, and this is going to save us a lot of time. And I said, well, good, because I don't have any.
So, you have 3 days.
I got 2 minutes, any minute. So as fast as we can go. And I did. We moved so quickly. That was on a Tuesday. So it was Tuesday. I probably called them somewhere at around 5, 6 o'clock because, they were in, they're further west. So it was earlier for them. And I started filling out that application that evening on a Tuesday. And I was accepted by them by Thursday afternoon. And I was on a plane Sunday, early Sunday morning, like at 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday.
Wow.
So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday I was on the plane.
But
if
you
you
did,
count.
so obviously you didn't die in 5 days.
And I didn't die because they said, I told them, I said, well, I was told that this could rupture at any moment. Like this could just, a piece could break apart and my heart will stop. She said, yes. And we have an immediate protocol. She said, the doctors will talk to you more, but for right now, do not touch any sugar or processed food. None, nothing. And I said, okay, so what's that about? She said, it feeds cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And when a tumor is as fragile and as branching as yours, she said, you don't want to feed it that. That makes it much more, what was the word she used? There was a word, it makes it much more precarious. She said, you want to stop all of that. Stick to just vegetables and salads and stay away from meat. She said, just stick to really whole foods. She said,
Plant-based, basically.
yeah.
Plant-based. Yeah.
And she
Cool.
said, and the tumor will stay calm. She said, it will stay calm. And that will be your first beginning of your treatment.
Wow.
So I was shocked about that as well. Because of course I asked the doctor, my doctor, is there anything I could do? And he said, no. He said, there's nothing you can do.
But see, the doctors don't know everything. Obviously, you found actually because you've heard of it, you found probably the best place for your cancer in the world.
For me, absolutely. I absolutely did. Because
Wow.
I was so in line with whatever they said and whatever they were telling me, I was just like, yeah, great, great. And then I would follow it. And then sure enough, on the flight, we had, everything was fine. I made it there. And then we started a 10-day program
Mm-hmm.
of trying to prepare the tumor for cancer surgery. And then the problem was on this, what they did, these treatments, I lost even more weight. I was losing weight, which is why I knew something was wrong. That was really my biggest tip off. But then I started losing vast amounts of weight. But that was designed to make the tumor angry. Wasting of body fat is really what you want to do to aggravate the tumor. That was one of their treatments.
Were you fasting? Like actually like water fasting or?
No, they were
Okay.
feeding me like mad, but they were feeding me only foods that the cancer disliked.
Like a plant-based diet, basically.
Plant-based, I had special herbal, all kinds of special things that the cancer hated.
Wow.
Because then their strategy was to get the tumor to keep collapsing on itself, like contracting inwards, which is what they wanted. Because when tumors contract, they get harder. And they wanted the tumor more firm. They didn't want it flimsy.
So
They
they
wanted
were,
it very firm.
were there specific kind of vegetables that they were feeding you or fruit that they were feeding more of?
Oh no, it was basically everything. I didn't have a lot of fruit. I had a little bit of fruit, but not a lot of fruit. And there was very little. There was some grain, but not a lot of grain. And then occasionally they would give me chicken because my weight loss was so severe. Because I was constantly hungry. I was constantly hungry. That
Mm-hmm.
was I would say one of the roughest things about the treatment. No matter how much they fed me, and I mean, I could eat plates of whatever I wanted, but within an hour, I was ravenous. I was
What do you
ravenous,
what do you
and I was
think would
losing weight.
happen if you fasted during that time? Maybe it would have the adverse effect.
Well, no, because they needed to keep the rest of my body strong. They wanted to weaken the tumor, but strengthen the rest of me.
Right.
So that's why they didn't go for fasting. They didn't want fasting. They wanted the strengthening of all the rest of my parts.
Right. Because
But
you
they
needed
were
the energy. You needed the energy.
correct. I needed the energy to survive the surgery. So,
Okay.
and
Okay.
that's kind of what they were playing with, the timeline, because, the strategy is to weaken the tumor and strengthen me. But if they go too far, I might get too weak. You know what I mean? And then you're in trouble. Or if they don't get the tumor to get like more contracted, then it might break apart during surgery. So they were playing this timeline, and they were trying to figure out like when was the best time for surgery. And they finally nailed it.
So, how long was it? Once since you arrived in Germany, what's the timeline?
We were in Mexico.
Oh, Mexico. Okay, okay.
I looked up Germany, but I found Mexico.
Mexico. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the timeline, it was about 10 days from my arrival to my surgery.
That's pretty quick. 10 days.
It was pretty quick. And then we really kind of had to go. I started losing a lot of blood in my urine. And that was a sign that the tumor was really now getting very aggressive. And then they decided, they finally saw a window of opportunity, and we took it. I did have to have a blood transfusion. So things were a little murky just before the surgery. They were getting a little worried. But what was great about them, they didn't ever tell me, they would only tell me everything was great. All I'd ever hear if I asked anything, like I'm like bleeding massively, and they'd go, "No, that's good.
That's good."
You're
bleeding out the tumor.
I'm losing more weight. Oh no, that's good. I'm starving to death. No, that's good.
Were you losing hair as well?
No, my hair was actually getting thicker and better than it had been. I was getting more. The only thing is, I was never sweating. No matter how hot it was, I didn't sweat. And I I lost all kinds of body rash things. Just gone. I used to get sweat rashes and stuff like that. Clear. My skin was just clear.
Do you think it was the diet or the cancer, or maybe a combination of both?
I think it was a combination of both. Yeah.
The body was struggling so much fighting itself, so it had to attack the weakest points or something.
Exactly.
Were you doing something else as well?
Was I good?
So this is the physical level. They were working on you physically, but
yes, and they were working on me mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I had yoga classes. I had laughing yoga classes. I had meditation. I had doctor appointments. I had psychologists. I had a team. I had a team of people. I had 7 doctors. I had, we would go into therapy sessions. I would do electronic or electrical treatment sessions to pulsate energy into me. Reiki, acupuncture, colonic therapy, you name it.
You had everything. Basically, they threw everything at you.
All kinds of, and it was all mapped out according to what was happening with me at that particular time and moment.
So that sounds amazing. That's like a holistic treatment of cancer, basically.
Yeah, and it is a holistic center, and everything was on the computer. So like the front desk, which looks like a 4-star hotel front desk, but really it's a medical station, but it doesn't look like one. As a matter of fact, nothing looks medical. They hide all of it because they also have guests there that are just there for a spa, Right. So you're walking around with people who are just there to, get like younger looking, and then you're there with people who are dying, so it's like,
it's a good combination.
You never know who is who. And when something would go wrong, all I would do is I would just tell the front desk, like, I'm having a problem or whatever. Room service was the medical staff. Unless you wanted food, then you'd get that. Usually I'd go down for dining, though. There was, in-house dining, and it was just like a hotel. I mean, it was just like a hotel. And then anything, if I recorded that I threw up that morning, it went into the computer, and every doctor I saw knew. And then every doctor would work their treatment around nausea or whatever was going on.
Wow, that's you basically landed in a perfect place. And
yeah, I call it my fantasy paradise medical island.
And then obviously Obviously, you didn't die because after the operation, then what happened after the operation?
Well, it was just an amazing day. I went into another heightened state, which I really think was drug induced, because those were the first drugs I was on,
Right.
was the anesthesia and going into surgery. Um, and I just was on a total high. Um, and they all said it went perfectly. The tumor, the kidney, it came out. The doctor kept saying like a baby, that's how I was envisioning it. I was going to deliver my little demonic baby, which I called Rosemary's Baby. And I thought, I'm going to deliver this little demonic baby, and it's going to come out, and it's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And it was. And so then I still was staged at a stage 2 with an abnormally large tumor. So what was weird about my case is the tumor was very frightening. The cancer, though, was only at a stage 2. And they said that may have been because the treatment really kept it more isolated. But your tumor, they said, was like stage 4 or higher. They said your tumor was massive. But the actual cancer was very, very low level. And then they told me, I said, so what are we going to do for the cancer then? They said, oh, we're going to make a serum out of the tumor. We're sending it to a lab. And I said, what? And they said a serum. It's like a serum, and it'll be made from your tumor. And then what we're going to do is inject you with this serum. And I said, well, what's that going to do? And they said it'll kill any radical things that are floating around in your blood system. I said, you're kidding. And they said, no. And I said, well, is that like chemo? And they said, well, no, it's really not chemo, but it works a little better than chemo because it's made from your tumor. So it'll just kill everything that's running around your system.
So wait, they use your tumor that they removed to inject it in the cancer, basically.
Yeah, so it's kind of works like a vaccine. They re-inject me with it, and then that in actuality blocks me. Like I can never get that cancer again. It's impossible because it's like I've been vaccinated against it.
Wow.
Yeah, I was blown away by that one.
Wait, I still don't get it. Like you were basically injected with the same cancer that you have, and that killed it.
They do something in the lab with it, and they break it down, and then they mix it with whatever they mix it with to create the antibodies in order to block you from ever getting it again. So then you become immune. So they said if you ever get a cancer, you have to get another one. You can't get that one.
And you were like, fine.
And I'm like, great, all right.
So this must have cost a fortune then to fly down to Mexico and to have to be there for 2 weeks or however long you were there.
Yes. And so this is the part of the story that's really like for me, I don't know how I did this, but years ago, and I'm talking like in the early 90s, my insurance had gone sky high, my medical insurance. And the job that I was at, I was now freelancing, and so I couldn't get insurance. And they wanted to charge me like $500 a month.
Wow.
And I thought that's crazy because, back then that was an outrageous sum to pay for insurance. Now it's nothing, but back then it was outrageous. And so I thought about it, and I thought, you know what? I never use the insurance. I never make the deductible. And I usually would go to, the doctor. It'd be like a little prescription or something. It would be no big deal. So I thought, you know what? Why don't I just put $500 a month in the bank and save that money up in an account for insurance purposes?
That's better, yes.
That's better. So that's what I did. So believe it or not, by the time this happened, and for years I had that money and it kept growing, and I thought I should do something with all this money because $500 a month, that's $6,000 a year. $6,000 a year in 10 years is $60,000
plus interest, right?
Plus interest, which back then was huge. As a matter of fact, one at one point, my interest was as much as the $500 I was putting in.
What?
It was crazy.
That's crazy about compounding interest. It just kind of grows like,
It just grew and grew,
yeah,
especially back then, because this is before the crash in 2008. You
right.
know, I had those like 14 years before 2008. And I had a ridiculous amount of money. And I thought, well, it'll just be a retirement account. It'll just be, you know, money that I'll use for retirement. And then this happened, and I paid the entire thing off in cash, and I still had more than half of it left.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is, you were well prepared then. You were like,
I was well prepared, and it was, and to be honest, if you would have told me back then that you're going to get a deadly cancer and you're going to need this money, I would say, oh no, there's no way. I'm too healthy. It'll never happen. Nobody in my family's ever gotten cancer. It'll never happen.
So what kind of work
But,
were you doing?
well, you know, I worked as an actor for years, and then I worked as a teacher at an acting school. I taught voice. I taught Alexander technique, which is a technique. It's a mind-body technique. He was an actor who lost his voice and developed a technique to solve it, but then he found you could solve a lot of things with the technique. So
Wait, hold on. Is it not, is it similar to Feldenkrais, or does it have any relation, or
well,
not at all?
they were they knew each other, and there are similarities, but practitioners of the two will tell you that they're completely different, and they work very differently. Alexander works on you and the way you use you throughout your day. Feldenkrais doesn't do that. They work on you in different movements and things that you may never do in your life. So it's a very different way to go about it.
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry
But
to interrupt. Go ahead.
no, but that's really what I was doing, and I also had become an opera singer.
Wow.
During that time, so I was singing opera, and that's kind of why I think I got cancer. I was kind of burning the candle at both ends. I had, you know, my teaching. I worked full time at a school. I had my private clients, and I had opera. And then when I started getting bigger in opera, and I started traveling and going to Europe, that was a lot. That was a lot to manage.
So you were working a lot as well. You must have been
I was working a
60
lot.
hours a week, so more.
Yeah. At the time I actually came down with cancer, my schedule was overwhelming. It was overwhelming, which is, from my perspective, probably why I came down with the cancer in the first place.
Okay, a little sidetrack. Do you think singing, especially singing opera, do you think it improves your voice?
Well, if you, let me put it this way, it's like anything. If you know how to use yourself well, you will always improve whatever you do vocally, physically, mentally, emotionally, or psychologically. But if you don't know how to use yourself well, anything you do could be potentially dangerous. So, and the most common thing is, for example, construction people have a tendency to have very bad backs.
Yes.
The reason is because they're not using themselves well. It's not the construction work, it's how they're using themselves while they're doing the construction work. So some of them don't have a problem, but many of them do. And that's my philosophy of life. Nothing can hurt you if you know what you're doing. But if you don't know what you're doing, it's like swimming, you know, in the ocean. Nothing can hurt you if you know how to swim, but if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to drown.
So there is a wrong way to sing opera, like you can
There is a wrong way, yes, to sing in general. There's a wrong way to sing opera. The opera singers lose their voices all the time. There's a wrong way for a singer to sing. Singers lose their voices all the time. So there is a wrong way. Well, just like we know there's a wrong way to eat. There's a wrong way to drink, you know, too much. There's a wrong way to anything.
Right. Sounds like you were doing too much of everything at that point.
I was working myself too hard. I was taking care of everything else and not me. And I think finally it blew. I just blew.
But did you answer my question? Does it actually improve your voice, or if you use it right? Let's say, let's preface it. If you sing
Okay.
opera the right way,
Oh yeah, your
because
voice will grow.
Mike,
Voice grow. Yeah.
you know that guy from Discovery Channel used to have a show called Dirty Jobs, Mike Rowe, and his voice. I think he was an opera singer for a while, and his
Uh-huh.
voice is pretty amazing.
Yep. Because remember, the voice grows all through our lives. And although some people feel it gets weaker, but remember, if you use it badly, it does get weaker. It's just like the body. If you use it badly, it gets weaker. If you use it well, it improves. So for example, I had Alexander teachers. I had one Alexander teacher at school when I was training who was 92, and she moved like a 50-year-old.
Wow. Because of the Alexander technique, basically.
Right. Because when you have a better relationship with the mind and the body and how you're using something, that relationship helps the body to move and to expand into a better organization. And so it becomes stronger, and that
Wow.
includes the voice. That includes breathing. Breathing is another problem. If you're a bad breather, you can have a lot of problems. A lot of problems people do.
So do you think maybe for construction that they could start with Alexander technique, or teach them proper ways to work, and that way they'd be more protected, let's say.
Correct. Because let's face it, it would be like surfing. Somebody who thinks they're going to go out and surf without lessons or ski without lessons, you're looking at maybe hurting yourself. You really need to kind of investigate dangerous things. No one would ever be a parachute jumper without some kind of training. I mean, that would be imbecilic.
Yeah, a bit insane.
Yeah, but people think, oh, when they're just tossing a ball around or bending, that they don't need help. But some do. Some don't bend well. Some don't throw balls well. Some don't swim, use their shoulders well. Some don't use their knees well.
Yes, there's a famous case of Derrick Rose, an NBA player that he had a knee injury, I think ACL, tore his ACL, and
Common.
then after that he had multiple injuries, but eventually he had to relearn how to jump and all that because he was
Yep.
using his knees or the way wrongly, so he had to relearn how to put less stress on the knees.
Absolutely, because remember, knees really shouldn't have a lot of stress at all. The knee joint is actually not real in that it's the bottom of the top leg bone meeting the bottom of the two bottom leg bones. It's really what we call the knee is really all the ligamentation and all the tendons and all the stuff between those two bones.
Right.
But they're just two bones. That's what they are.
So now, after the cancer, did you obviously did you change your lifestyle? Did you start eating differently and exercising differently?
Yes, I was much more aware. I had always been a fairly good eater, but my opera life was hard to eat well. It was very hard to eat well, especially airports. It's very hard to do. Traveling is very hard to do. So after the cancer, yeah, there was a huge shift. I was much more conscious and aware. I gave up all meat with the exception of occasional chicken because my weight was really thin. So they advised me to eat chicken or turkey or fowl or fish. But I don't do much of it anymore. I stay on heavy vegetarian, no coffee. I don't drink coffee anymore. It's bad for kidney. I don't drink alcohol anymore. It's bad for kidney. And I don't do red meat ever. So
Okay.
those are the things I started to shift.
So you eat a lot more probably fruit and vegetables and just healthy stuff, and avoid sugar as well, probably.
Yeah, and I can have sugar, but I don't. I say I have the better sugars, more pure, more organic, not the nothing processed. I don't do processed.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk in general. Why do you think people get cancer?
I think, like me, it's a storm. It's a storm. A perfect storm comes together between the emotional, mental, psychological, and physical worlds of our system, and that storm, at the end of it, knocks something out, and that's the beginning of cancer. That's my belief. That's what I believe happens. And I certainly can say that's what happened with me. That's what happened with me. And there's a lot of people who I have now worked with, and met through my book that also agree with that. Now there are some people that totally disagree with that, and I understand that, and that's fine. But we know, there are such things as radiation. There are such things as outer things that can also affect you, and that's very true as well. So it's just a matter of what the person is sensitive to, that finally can take the system down. And remember, cancer cells start small and then they grow. They grow.
So for somebody, it might be maybe it might be a radiation of the phone or the cell phone, let's say.
That's right. Remember, some people are far more sensitive. Other people are not as sensitive.
Hmm.
Just like sensitivity to foods or alcohol. Some people can have one drink and they'll fall asleep, and some people can have 5 and they're fine.
Yeah, there seems multiple factors. It's
Yep.
genetics, there's diet, exercise, stress level. Like there's a whole host of it's impossible to say. Like
Absolutely.
and then
And
the
people,
spiritual, the resentments.
correct. Yes. And people try to classify disease according to only the physical model. And that's why you see a lot of problems with cure, because it's not just about the physical. But Western medicine has a tendency, like with mine, to look at it, they assess the physical, and then they go, oh, you have no hope. You're going to die. There's no way out of this. You see, and there's so many other factors, and that's what I learned on my journey. There is no way to ever really predict how something will ever come out. It's impossible. It's impossible to do.
To what degree do you think destiny has a role? If like, I sometimes think that if somebody is meant to die, they're gonna die, no matter what you do.
I get
But
you.
but obviously that doesn't like it's a hypothetical. But let's say in your case, you I think you would have died if you hadn't gone to the clinic.
Well, that's a very interesting question.
Mm.
That's a very interesting question, because I have known people who were supposed to die. There's one famous case of a guy, it was told deadly cancer. He decided to move to Greece. He always wanted to live in Greece because he was born in Greece and his parents were from Greece. He had visited there, started raising a garden. He's famous. You can look him up. And he didn't die for years. So I will never say that I needed the clinic, but I did. I mean, I did in the end. They did extract the tumor. But it's, I no longer see healing as a one-way thing. I don't see it, and I'm not downplaying Western or Eastern or any of it. I just believe that the person can heal if they really have a key into themselves and the disease. And I've now, since I wrote my book, I've had people that have told me unbelievable stories. I've had people that have asked me for advice, which I generally don't give. But what I do is I ask them a lot of questions. I ask them a lot about what they're feeling and what they're looking at and what's going on. So I no longer limit my own thinking, nor do I limit other people's thinking around their healing, because you just never know. I've heard too many wild stories now. Too many wild stories. So I
So,
keep it more open.
so what do you think would be the key if somebody's, let's say they're watching this and they just learned that they have cancer? Um, what would be
Staying
a,
in a state of fearlessness to the best of their ability, to not allow the diagnosis or the threat of death or the threat of suffering to overwhelm the system. Because once the system feels it is weak and it is a victim to something, it actually starts changing into that role. So I no longer was worried about dying. I accepted that I could die. And I was even okay with dying, but I was not afraid of dying. And that's where people get messed up. That's what's going on with this whole COVID world. People are terrified.
of dying?
Governments and the medical have terrified people. And almost every doctor and nurse that I have spoken to personally has said when they are diagnosed with COVID, that is the biggest problem because they're terrified that they're going to die.
Hmm.
And they said that's where you can't even get them to calm down. You can't even get them into the idea that there are things we can do for you. They're just like, oh my God, oh my God. And they right away, they go into a panic attack. So,
But
you know,
actually, the survival rate is pretty high, especially if you're
it's
young.
extremely high. I mean, it's extremely high. But see, again, it's all about perspective. How do you want to look at it? Do you want to keep looking at the 200,000 deaths and go, oh my God, that's so many, which really, it's not a lot of deaths. It's not a true pandemic.
Right.
200 million deaths would have been a lot of deaths,
Yes.
but 200,000 deaths, if you really add in, and remember, almost 90, I don't know what the actual figure is, but I know it's 90% or more had prior problems, severe prior problems. So is 200,000 really all that high? But as you can hear in the news media, they want to make it into the highest number ever.
Well,
Even,
it's political as well,
of
and
course,
they wanna make Trump look bad and all.
of course.
It's politically motivated and might change after the election because there's nothing at stake after. Let's say maybe
Exactly.
I don't know.
Exactly. And unfortunately, they use that manipulation with. Remember that even like, for example, my treatment that I received in Mexico is illegal here. So it is not allowed by law here in the United States.
My
Nor
grandmother
is it
making the
in Europe.
appearance for the first time. It's entertaining.
That's
She doesn't
good.
understand English, so I'm just rolling with it. Um, well, we'll see if this gets. Sometimes people have trouble getting past the censors on YouTube because sometimes they. But I don't want to make a prediction what's gonna happen with this. But I do think there's gonna be a change after the election. That's my feeling.
And I would agree with you because again, you can see there's a lot of political motivation. There was a lot of hidden information. The hydroxychloroquine, nobody really, they all said, no, it's wrong. And that was not actually true. So again, it's just, you can see there's a multitude of agendas going on. And
Yeah, it concerns me at the politicization of medicine.
yes, but remember, it's very political long before the pandemic, long
Okay,
before coronavirus, very political. FDA, lots of problems. CDC, lots of problems. WHO, lots of problems. There are massive amounts of problems in those associations, and there's massive amounts of manipulation.
so how do people combat that? So basically, self-education. Would you say spirituals get a spiritual practice, especially if you have cancer, get something gratitude even or something like that?
I'm going to go back to what I said before. You've got to get on top of your fear.
Hmm.
When you are walking around afraid, you are a target and you are a victim. Hey, they did a wonderful series once on muggers, and they went through just people. They showed muggers who were, professional muggers, people who they would and would not mug. And do you know they showed it separately? And each mugger picked the same people that they would mug. And they said, why? And they said, because they were an easy target. You can see how afraid they are. But they could have like a little woman who was only like maybe 5 feet tall and 86 pounds. And like, they'd say, well, what about that little woman over there? Oh no, you would never touch her. She would fight you. You would be in jail if you tried to mug her. See what I mean?
I've seen those videos on YouTube where it's small women in elevators or something like that fight off people, and it turns out they know Taekwondo or karate or something, and they kick him in the crotch or something like that, and the mugger is sorry if he ever woke up that day,
And what those people really have is they have a sense of no fear. They have a fearlessness sense. They have confidence, and they are not a walking victim. They are not walking around thinking that they're going to be in harm's way. And right now, a lot of my clients, I mean, that's one of the biggest problems. They think they're going to go outside and get COVID. It's ridiculous, but they think that. And if you think it, you're going to attract some bad stuff. Right. Remember, hypochondriacs get sick all the time. All the time. They really get sick because they believe in it. So of course they get sick.
So it's like the media programming makes it worse and makes it people more susceptible by fear.
Yeah. And then they keep showing you numbers and things. And so they keep building up the fear. And that's how you control people. Remember, that's how they kept slaves. You can only keep a slave by making them afraid. That's all. That's the only power you have over people. So if you want to make them afraid, you own them. And then when you own them, you can tell them whatever you want. You can make them do whatever you want. You can lock them up in their house forever. It'll work.
What do you think of this is going to be a controversial question, I guess, the masks for COVID, since we're on this topic.
If you are afraid and you feel you need to wear that mask, then you should wear it.
Okay.
And if you feel that mask is not helping you and it's making you more fearful and making you more afraid, then you shouldn't wear it.
Because I've heard of cases where people wear it 8 hours a day and then they have some adverse effects.
Oh yeah, headache number one. Most of my clients, they start to get headaches right away. Remember, most people have poor breathing ability without anything,
right?
Just in their normal life. Most people believe that their lungs are in the front of their chest. It's totally wrong. The lungs are in the back. They're not in the front. And so many people, they have wrong concepts about breathing. And so then you're going to put a mask on and make it harder. People with asthma, forget it. So that's my feeling about the mask. If you're afraid, wear it. If you're not, and you don't want to wear it, don't.
Unless in some places you're compelled to wear it, and then there would be repercussions. Okay,
exactly.
I want to ask you some differently. So how do people get to a place of fearlessness? How? It seems like this is a very important point that you're driving home.
Yes, it is. First of all, you have to remember that fear is a perspective. It's not a reality. It doesn't actually exist. Okay? So let's say somebody were to come in with a gun right now and point it at my head. That person cannot make me afraid. They can point it at my head. They can say they're going to shoot. But only I can make myself afraid. Do I know they're going to pull the trigger or not pull the trigger? No, I don't know that. But in the moment they're pointing it at my head, they haven't pulled the trigger yet, because if they did, I'd be dead. So I have to think maybe there, like I did with my cancer, there is another way out of this future. I don't have to think that the future is going to be me dying. Maybe it will be, but maybe it won't be. And then what you do is you expose fear. You expose fear as the fraud that it really is. it is not real unless you make it real. I mean, and I'll be honest, like the virus, I've been exposed to this virus so many times I can't even tell you. And I'm talking about clients that I worked with who have the antibodies, who were sick when I was working with them, and I didn't get it. So
you were tested and you didn't get it.
well, I've never been tested, so maybe I had it and don't know it. But
that's the thing. It's so easy to get over. It seems like if you're healthy, it's just like you brush it off.
But I never had symptoms. I never got sick. I never felt sickness. And of course, I stayed the 15 days, which is really all anybody should have stayed, the 15 days. And then that's it. And I don't believe the whole, contagion thing, that anybody can pass it. They did the same thing with AIDS when it first came out. They said, if you just talk to somebody with AIDS, you'll catch it, which was completely not true. And I think, and by the way, that was Fauci. And now he's doing the same thing with this. I don't know if that's absolutely true, that you can be walking around with it for 15 days. I don't think I buy that. But I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. But personally, it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me.
So when you speak about fear, I hear a lot of, I think I hear a lot of Wayne Dyer. And I think he was saying that
Wayne
fear
was very
is
big on that. Yep.
Fear is false evidence appearing real. I think that was one of his, because I used to listen to some of his stuff, so I know.
False evidence appearing real. And again, people project the only way you can be afraid is you project to a bad future, or you project to a bad past incident. Neither of which is necessarily true, because remember, the past and the future don't exist in the present ever. So that's where people, if you keep working with it, you expose, oh yeah, why am I afraid? What I'm fine right now. And that's what I even told myself with the cancer. I was in great shape. I was doing better than Anita was doing on her deathbed. I was totally functional. So why am I going to walk around being afraid this thing is going to burst? It hasn't burst yet. So maybe it's not going to burst. And then it didn't burst.
So you radically accept in the moment that this moment I'm okay, and trying not to project into the future fear, but just be like,
the past, right?
Or in the past, right? And just be like, I'm okay right now, and this is all I need, like this moment. And if I can take care of this moment, and all my life will be well, because all life is lived in the moment, not in the
And in destiny, death will come. That is destiny. So death will come one day to everyone, even to the planet, even to the sun. Death will come. Now the question is, how are you going to live until that moment? And if you're living in fear, you're calling in death and disease quicker. If you're living in freedom, you're pushing them away. So it's kind of for me, it's like, now that I've been through this, it's like an easy choice. It's like, well, what do you want? And this is what I tell my cancer people. What do you want? Do you want to be afraid? Do you want to be, if you're on the Titanic, do you want to be screaming and running around? Or do you want to be having a bottle of champagne and dancing and having a good time? What do you want to be doing?
Because either way, you could die.
Yeah, the ship's going down. Either way. So what do you want to do? Do you want to spend because with me, I believe how we go out is going to be, especially after reading Anita Moorjani's book, is going to be the foray into how well things go when we're out of here. And personally, I want them to go well.
Right. And then you hear stories of spirits being stuck. I've had somebody tell me that she's helping people cross on the other side if they're lost and all that. And
they get afraid, they get fearful, they get attached, they want to stay, and then now you got a ghost on your hands. And it's like, who wants that?
So basically, you would recommend if somebody has cancer to broaden their horizon, if the atheist or anything, that they maybe look into Wayne Dyer's book as well. Read Anita's book, Anita Moorjani.
And
Uh,
and to be honest, I would tell them to broaden their horizon in whatever direction they feel compelled. In whatever way they feel compelled. I wouldn't personally recommend it a book unless they asked me for a book, but I wouldn't personally recommend to them any one thing. I would recommend to them to stay open-minded and to sit with it and accept and see what comes to you. Where do you feel you need to go? What do you feel you need to do? And if you are indeed going to die, then die happy, die fulfilled. Don't die in fear. Don't die a victim.
hmm.
Why?
David R. Hawkins, who also Wayne Dyer recommended to some people. I know some people found him through, and he's an amazing teacher. He used to say he had a book called Healing and Recovery. And throughout the book, he always says every illness is physical, mental, and spiritual. And I think he would agree with that sentiment. Yes?
Totally 100%. Totally. That we don't heal on one level. We just don't heal physically. All of them are working. And to be honest, I'm kind of becoming in the belief that the spiritual is more important.
Right. It
Because
seems
I've
like
seen too many miraculous things.
the spiritual would be most important, and then the mental, and then the last would be the physical, while the
That's
Western
right.
medicine exclusively focus on the physical, which is a
Correct.
very kind of limited point of view.
Very limited. When you're only looking at physical, you're always very limited.
Hmm.
You know, and watch those people who do karate and they break those concrete blocks in half. I mean, there's a lot more going on than just physical.
It's
Watch the people who
mental.
walk through coals, hot coals that are 1,000 degrees. There's a lot more going on than physical.
Right. Tony Robbins does
Yeah,
famously those, and people walk on the coal and they're like, well, did something amazing.
that's right. And again, and then there's me, I'm supposed to be dead. I'm not dead. So there's
Hmm.
lots of examples out there for us. Anita is supposed to be dead. She's not dead.
Right. And it seems like going back, I guess, to once again to COVID, the mental is coming from fear from the media, and that's the
Always.
big thing.
The media, remember, it's programming. Programming. And
Right.
what do they program? If it's the news, it's fear, it's divisiveness. That's all it is. Anybody who's watching it, insane. And the best outlets are really the alternative outlets. That's where you're hearing more honest stories and more things are really coming to fruition. That's where I've learned most about COVID. I never look at the news for COVID. There's no point. Plus, now I know a lot of doctors and I have a lot of ins, so I don't need to. I don't need to
Yeah.
bother with it.
Yeah.
I don't need to bother.
So people should just be start taking care of themselves physically, mentally, and spiritually, and stop being in the fear. Basically, that's what we're saying. Take care of your
Absolutely.
immunity, eat better, exercise, and think well. Think well.
Well, and let's face it, thinking more positively is always better than negatively. But do remember, like if we take a half a glass of water, is it half full? Is it half empty? Or is it just a half a glass? All of those three things are true. And it's only your perspective that matters. If you can get out of your need for the water or your disgust of the water, if you can get out of your personal stuff, you start to see it for what it is. It's just a half a glass of water. That's all it is. Now, what do you want to do with the half a glass of water? Do you want to drink it? Do you want to dump it out? Do you want to throw it on a plant? What do you want to do with it?
Right.
See, people get all involved in, I hate that, and I hate water, I hate this, or whatever the case is. And then they build another problem around it. I mean, it's really what, like what they're doing with all the riots and everything. They just keep building more problems, more divisiveness, more fear, more problem, and then you're falling into the same programming. that you're doing exactly what they want you to do. That's what they want you to do. So if you want to do it, go ahead, blow yourself out. But what a waste of time. What a waste of time. When you could have been doing something that's going to really have an effect, really move something forward. Instead, you're going to be breaking other people's windows. And it's like, oh, okay, that's
not helpful.
Not helpful. Very not helpful.
So lastly, what advice would you give to people that maybe, I think I know what you're going to say, but if people have COVID, or if they're really afraid of the media's, some people might disagree with like what you're saying about COVID or anything like that. What advice generally would be, because I know you have a book as well, but that's okay. That's mostly based on your experience with cancer, but your journey, right? But everybody's journey is different.
Absolutely.
So what would your advice be then in general if people are struggling with any kind of illness, let's say?
To know that you are the only one that can heal you, and no doctor and no outside source can actually heal you unless you are willing to be healed. End of story. You are the only one that's doing it. Even if they're giving you the best chemo and everything else, you are still being healed. It is not healing you. As a matter of fact, chemo is killing you. It's just that it's killing the cancer and you. And then the people that are healed are the ones that survive, not dying. So you're the one that's doing the healing.
Right. Your body is healing itself.
That's right.
Right.
You are always having the baby, and anything outside of you is the midwife. That's it. But the midwife is never having the baby. You are always having the baby. You are always doing the healing. And everything outside of you is just a midwife. They can only assist you. That's all they can do. You're doing the hard work.
Amazing. So I'd like to thank you, and also Anita Moorjani's team that recommended you.
Yeah, they're so kind to me. I love those. They're wonderful, wonderful people.
I didn't know about you, so they recommended you, and I was like really grateful to have you on the show. I think my audience has learned a lot. And what's your book, the title of your book?
My book is called Bliss, One Hero's Journey, because again, we are all one person on a heroic journey towards our bliss. So it's Bliss, One Hero's Journey on Amazon.
I'll put the link on the Amazon underneath if you're watching this on YouTube or Anchor or podcast or anywhere. And thank you for being on the show. And
thank you so much. This was so much fun, Matthias. So lovely to meet you.
Thank you for watching and listening.